Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Happy birthday, America. 244 years. 244 years. And here we are. We find ourselves on this anniversary of our Declaration of Independence. But not at the happiest of days, as insurrectionists, malcontents, and liars across the breadth and width of this grand nation distort the reality of these United States. So on this Independence Day, I say to you, in Congress on the 4th of July, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes or lies. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than the right themselves by abolishing the forms in which they are accustomed. But when in the long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpation, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let these facts be submitted to a candid world. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the words of the Declaration of Independence, the opening two paragraphs from the 13 colonies on the 4th of July, 1776, 244 years ago, on the date that we declared our independence from a tyrant. Here we are 244 years later, and in our midst, we have domestic enemies, insurrectionists, armed insurrectionists, who make their presence known by terrorizing, demonizing, demagoguing, and attacking innocents. While callow politicians from both political parties sit back quietly and say nothing, while weak-willed and useless mayors and governors sit on their hands or vapidly cheer on insurrectionists as they destroy civil order and fray the social fabric of this great nation. Yet here we are, this grand republic. I have 8 great-great-grandfathers. 7 of them fought during the Civil War. Every man fought in a Union regiment to preserve the Union and to abolish the institution of slavery. I'll not apologize for this great nation, the greatest experiment in governance in the history of mankind. Nor will I tolerate the nonsense that continues in parts of this country, and the shameful, idiotic, uninformed malcontents that attack this grand nation. It is interesting to me, as I look back at the Department of Veterans Affairs statistics on what happens to veterans, the numbers we've lost in combat, which battle deaths in the history of this nation and all our conflicts combined, totals approximately 670,000 Americans who've died for this country. White, black, Asian, Hispanic, all gave the ultimate sacrifice. 670,000 battle deaths. We've had far more deaths than that because of war, but that's the actual battle deaths. But what strikes me personally is that I served in combat for the first time in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. That was just in 1990, 1991 for the conflict itself. Not even 30 years ago. There were 2,225,000 serving soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen during that conflict, of which 694,550 of us deployed to the Gulf for the conflict, just under 700,000, or 1/3 of the force. But today, actually in November of 2019, so the number's even lower today, just 1,680,000 of us still draw breath on this planet. That means that 25% of those who were in uniform for the first Gulf War no longer live. 1 in 4 of us are no longer here. Now, I was a young second lieutenant, a butter bar, serving in the 3rd Battalion, 8th Cavalry from Gelnhausen, Germany, 2nd Brigade, 3rd Armored Division for the first Gulf War. Young second lieutenant. I find it staggering that 29 years later, 1/4 of the people who were serving uniform then have passed away. I suppose it's a normal thing, but just never really thought about it. Some of those folks gave their lives, not in that Gulf War. Fortunately, we had just 148 battle deaths. There were other deaths, but 148 battle deaths. But since then, many of my brothers and sisters in arms have passed away defending this nation, defending the ideals that all men are created equal, that we all have certain unalienable rights, fighting for equal justice alongside each other, men, women, without regard to ethnicity, without regard to race, without regard to religion, without regard to sexual orientation. I find that comical that for decades, we in the uniform were disparaged by unknowing morons and idiots in the press and in the public who presumed to think that we had issues with people's sexuality in uniform. We don't care. We want forthright team members. And the moronic, stupid Clinton-era policy of don't ask, don't tell was among the most harmful and anti-homosexual acts ever produced, this order. And those of us in uniform looked at it like the dumbest thing ever. We don't care where people come from. We don't care who you are, as long as you're honest. You perform your duties, and you treat others with respect. That's what being a soldier is all about. Doing the right thing at the right time when no one's looking. Because you're not looking for attention, you're not looking for glory. But looking back, I find it astounding that 1 in 4 of those who served in the Gulf War are now dead. It's kind of a sad situation, but you think about it. We live, we move on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I didn't expect anybody to be here. I just wanted to wish my nation, the greatest nation in the history of mankind. Am I biased? You damn Skippy, I'm biased. And am I an arrogant American? Well, if you take it that way, my apologies. It's not intended. I'm just proud to be an American. And I'm very happy that this is the 4th of July, in the midst of all this idiotic lunacy that's taking place in this country, with these people that are so venal, so hateful, that they'll do anything to destroy this country just so they can get Donald Trump out of office. They're idiots, absolute idiots. Their grip on reality is tenuous at best. Their grip on morality is non-existent. I've made it clear that I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. Not a fan. The man is coarse. The man is crass. He's a bully. But he's a damn effective bully. The United States is respected around the world again, despite what the press tells you. Don't believe that nonsense. Over 1 million people are naturalized as citizens in this country each and every year, head and shoulders above any other country in the world at naturalizing and letting people join our club to be Americans. We are head and shoulders above the rest of the world. No one comes remotely close to naturalizing 1 million new citizens every year. And we do this consistently. Why? Because we're racist? Because we're bigots? What a load of horse crap. Constantly hear this refrain that America's a racist country from a bunch of morons that know nothing about what they're talking about. If it's such a racist country, why have we, Americans, black, white, brown, whatever we are, allowed all these immigrants to come to our country? The vast majority of them being people of color from other parts of the world, less fortunate. If the country's so racist, why is it? Well, Anthony, thank you so much. Anthony just donated 35 Rand through Super Chat. Thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate that immensely. Thank you so much. I take that as an endorsement for the comments I'm making. Thank you so much. If this country is so racist, ladies and gentlemen, if whites feel so under siege in this country, why is it that primarily white Americans have allowed their percentage of the country's population to be reduced? In 1960, 89% of this country was white. Whatever white is, by the way, I find that ludicrous. Race is an artificial construction. Am I white? Probably more pink than I'm white. But in 1960, 89% of the country is white. Today, 73% of the country is white. Are whites terrified of becoming a minority or a plurality? No, it's utter lunacy. If we were, we would have shut our borders 4 decades ago. We would never have allowed all these people to come into our country to become part of this society, to become an American, to be part of our team, if that was truly what was going on here. And I'm sick of it. For those of you from South Africa, Afrikaans speakers, or those who live in South Africa, you know what I'm about to say. I am hot full of this nonsense. Utter nonsense. This is the greatest country, and there's a reason why people come here to live in peace and harmony. And these malcontents, these idiots that have the attention span of a fly are disgraceful. And they disgrace those 670,000 Americans who've given their lives to preserve and protect this grand union. They disgrace the memory of the hundreds of thousands of black Americans who served in uniform, rising from the ranks of private through general officer, to become even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's disgraceful, their conduct. And we've had enough of it. It's time for true patriots to stand up to corporate bullies like the National Football League, which seeks to disgrace this nation by fabricating a national anthem and playing it before the American anthem at sporting events. Good luck getting people to fill your stands. You shameful, shameful pandering jerks. Beyond belief. But it's not about these jerks, ladies and gentlemen. This country was founded on principle. Was it perfect? No. Did we have issues at the outset? Yes, we did. Let's go back to 1776. We declared our independence. We finally got it in 1783 at the Peace of Paris, in which the United Kingdom agreed to an independent United States. In 1781, we started the Articles of Confederation. And they lasted for a short period of time and proved to be faulty. So a constitution was drawn up at a constitutional convention. And the Constitution did not guarantee any rights to individuals until the first of 10 amendments were applied, which were ratified in 1791. And they were known as the Bill of Rights. The first, the second, the third, all the way through the 10th Amendment, which guaranteed freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, and rights like this. And the right, of course, yes, here in America, the right to keep and bear arms. These are the rights from the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to that grand document. And so we move forward, imperfect as we were. Who could vote in 1790 at our first census when there were 3.1 million Americans on these shores in 13 states in 1790? 3.1 million Americans. Who could vote? Men? Yes. All men? No. All white men? No. No women. Hardly a perfect situation. But we set down with the ideals to make this a nation for everyone. And over time, we realized that. In 1807, the slave trade was banned in the United States. Shortly after we became a country, it implemented a constitution. 1807. The institution of slavery was not outlawed, although it was outlawed in several territories as the country expanded further west. We had multiple compromises, including the Missouri Compromise. We had wars, outright civil war in the Kansas Territory over slaveholders and non-slaveholders, a place where John Brown went and got involved in insurrection out there before he came back east and met his fate at Harper's Ferry, trying to end slavery. People seem to forget that the first act of Congress, around the time of the Constitution, was the Northwest Ordinance Act of 1787. And that ordinance, which formed the states of Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan, is the act that banned into perpetuity the institution of slavery, preventing slavery from ever becoming legal north of the Ohio River, from the very outset of this country. Yet we're lied to, and we're told that this country was founded on the great sin of slavery. That's nonsense, ladies and gentlemen, perpetuated by fools and morons and people with a political agenda who seek to destroy this great experiment. And they're wrong. This isn't fantasy. This is factual history. (1807) Act was passed. 1808, the slave trade was stopped. Were slaves brought to these shores after the date? Yes, they were. There were illegal slave-running ships, a handful of them, that made it to the shores of the United States in the ensuing 40 years, 50 years, before the institution of slavery was finally ended. But we fought a civil war to preserve the Union and end slavery. And then we continued our expansion of our nation further westward. And I've had enough of this nonsense. This is a grand nation founded on great ideals. When I was a child, we still had court-ordered busing, in which the federal courts directed that schools in Ohio be forced to integrate students by taking students from predominantly black neighborhoods, busing them to predominantly white neighborhoods, and forcing those kids to go to school there, and vice versa, taking white kids and forcing them to go to other schools, despite the fact that their parents were paying taxes in a different school district and paying for a better school. So instead of improving the schools, they moved children around, putting them in difficult circumstances, black and white kids. But the people running around today, these soy boys, these latte clowns, these ingrates, these morons that have the audacity to attack police horses. Seriously. They have no grasp of history. They have no knowledge. They have no understanding. So I didn't expect anybody to be in here, so let me say hello to the folks who are here. I saw 14 people here. It must have been too strident in my comments because we dropped to 10. But let me just say, Arno Olivier is here. Hello, Arno. Morton Christie, happy 4th. Thank you so much for that. Speech team screams for background music. Well, there was background music. Was it not good? Ashley says, hi, Chris and everyone. Anthony, land of the free, home of the brave. Indeed it is. And my ranger buddy there, Tom, who else, sir? Happy 4th. And back at you, Tom. Happy 4th of July. You know the deal. We both know the deal. We've served. And we don't serve for some Americans. We serve for all Americans. Whether they're born here or they're naturalized here. We serve for all of them. And we serve proudly, don't we, Tom? Morton says, but we've let in too many un-American people. Indeed we have. Indeed we have. When we let malcontents come in this country who hate America and let them in on the basis of diversity visas simply because someone thought that was a good idea, I'm not challenging the concept of diversity visa. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but not vetting people who clearly hate this country and allowing them to become American citizens despite their venal hatred for America, and then actually run for Congress and take their anti-Semitic, hate America voice to D.C. and spew their bile. Yeah, we have failed in that respect. Brian says, hi, Chris, greetings from Randburg. Well, hi, Brian, good to see you. Biggest problem, too many people from around the world have been allowed in and believe it's their country now. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. And the secret to success, the secret to the greatness of America historically has been that people desire to come here and they desire to assimilate and become part of this great country. But let me stop right there, because when you say assimilate, the progressives lose their mind. Who are you to tell people they must abandon their culture? I'm not telling anyone to abandon their culture. In fact, it's so sad that my German ancestors felt compelled to abandon their culture because they were ostracized and persecuted for being German Americans. Why? Because of the propaganda of the racist, vicious Wilson administration during the First World War, in which they demonized Germans because America went to war with Germany after the Lusitania was sunk. But even before that, German Americans were demonized. So much so that the thousands of German music groups and choirs were disbanded in the course of the First World War in the early 1920s. Germans who buried their children, even though they were born American, spoke English as a first language, but still buried them with gravestones written in German as late as the 1920s, ceased to do that. Many Germans anglicized their surname because you couldn't be a German in this country without being ostracized by Wilson and his rabid Democrats. They weren't the only ones. Others did it too. But when you allow people to come into the country who don't believe in your beliefs, back to my point. So yes, for centuries, people came to this country to be part of something, and they accepted the norms, the values, and the mores of America and became Americans. But that doesn't mean they abandoned their culture or abandoned their language even. If language and culture are important to the family, it is their responsibility to inculcate that in their progeny. And where those values are important, they are retained. And in fact, where they're important and valued by others, they become part of the wider fabric of society. There's a reason why America has kindergartens. We didn't invent kindergartens. It's not even an American word, not even an English word. We got it from the Germans because it was so valuable and so useful. There's a reason why cotillion is so popular in Texas and the old Southwest, because it's valued by the old Spanish families, the old Mexican families who inhabited the Southwest, Southern California, and Texas. And it is a cultural tradition that now is part of some Anglo families. There's a reason why so many Anglos and Hispanics marry in Texas. If it's valuable, people will retain it. There are families in New Mexico with Spanish ancestry that have been there for 400 years and they still speak Spanish. Why? Because they learned it in public school or because the state of New Mexico speaks Spanish? No, because it was valuable to them. They found a use for it and they retained it and they inculcated it in their progeny from generation to generation. There's a reason why in this country we have hundreds of thousands of Amish and Mennonites, many of whom still speak German 350 years after they arrived on these shores. In fact, many Amish, German is the first language in the family, and they learn it from in the household and from reading the Bible. Then they learn English 350 years after they came here. But are they Americans? You damn skippy, they're Americans. They pay their taxes. They contribute to society. They contribute to our economic prosperity. Do they serve in uniform? No. But people can be exempted for religious beliefs. We've done this throughout our history. But you don't have to serve in uniform to be an American. They're proud Americans. This concept that people should come to this country and bifurcate and divide and segregate themselves so that they don't integrate into society. And then we must tolerate their beliefs. Vile beliefs such as female genital mutilation or honor killings. Disgraceful, repulsive behavior that has no place in this society. Yet when you point this out, you get attacked. You watch. Soon the day will come when challenging someone about gender-based, when female genital mutilation, when you challenge them or try to prosecute from that, you'll actually have people who step out and say, what are you, a bigot? Are you a racist? Are you an Islamophobe? Never mind the fact that it has nothing to do with Islam. It has everything to do with culture. Culture in places like Yemen, parts of Nigeria, Chad, the Sudan, Niger. This is a practice in a cultural context, not a religious one. But we'll be accused of being homophobes and Islamophobes because we dare to uphold the values of this nation. And that's not a value here. Americans don't believe in slicing the genitals off of their children. That's just not something we buy into. Anyway, we're very far away from the birthday of the United States. I'm getting off track a little bit there. But here you go. So happy birthday, America. 244 years. I salute this grand nation. God bless the USA. And Lee Greenwood, who gave us an anthem with his song, God Bless the USA. Song we heard endlessly. I must have heard it 10,000 times by this point. And to this day, I still never grow tired of hearing Lee Greenwood. In fact, he came to Harrisburg and sang at the Senators game on the 4th of July just 2 years ago. And it was awe-inspiring. I'm a terrible singer. I'm a horrible voice. I have a voice made not for radio when it comes to singing. Yet I stood there proudly and sang it with Lee Greenwood, word for word. And that was the instrumental music that I played at the beginning of this stream. And I'll play Lee Greenwood at the end and take my chances with a copyright claim because it's just that good of music. And he's such a great performer. So let me see what else we got here in the chat. Morton says, I know it's expensive and Vietnam proved national servicemen or draftees are not as professional soldiers for the most part, but the U.S. should reconsider national service. Well, it's not just a question of expensive, Morton. What are you going to do? You got a lot of kids. It's huge cohorts. It's a country with 330 million people. How many people are you going to put in uniform? And what are you going to do with those people? If they don't serve a purpose, then you're just wasting their lives. You're wasting national resources. So I understand and appreciate what you're saying. But national service, which is the term you use, doesn't have to be uniform service in the military. It could be working for the Park Service. It could be working on other civic works projects. I'm not a fan of national service, but I understand the desire for it and why people want it, and I don't necessarily oppose it. But I don't like the idea of forcing people to do things. I don't like forcing people to serve in uniform. I'm a huge fan of the all-volunteer force. Now, I was never drafted. From the day I became a soldier, it was voluntary, and it was throughout my 36 and a half years in uniform. I could have left at any time, particularly after 20 years, and walked away with a paycheck. But I stayed for 36 years because I did it not for the paycheck, although the paycheck was helpful. Just a full disclosure, everyone likes a paycheck. You've got to feed yourself. You got to take care of your dog. You got to take care of your family. You got to pay your rent. You got to pay your car payment. But it wasn't exactly a wealth-creating vocation. I and millions of others do it because we have a sense of calling. Just like law enforcement officers, emergency medical technicians, doctors, and nurses who put themselves at risk each and every day around the world. People do it not just for a paycheck, but because they have a sense of calling, a sense of purpose. And that's what it's about. Public works, Morton, yes, that could be something people do, but I don't like compelling people. Perhaps it's a libertarian streak in me that doesn't like the government telling us what to do. And that's just perhaps why I'm not a fan of it. Not sure. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen, the 244 years since we declared our independence and we walked away from the United Kingdom. Of course, we didn't get away scot-free. That was 1776. We fought a long revolutionary war against British aggression. And finally, in 1783, we had the Peace of Paris. And then we were under the Articles of Confederation, and only later did we come under the U.S. Constitution. Our Constitution, a rather brief document, but very clear, one of the most beautifully written documents in the history of mankind, one which has been emulated endlessly around the world by other countries. And for that, if this is such a racist country, founded on the original sin of slavery, why would countries around the world emulate our Constitution? Once again, cutting another hole in the lies of the progressive left. But on this Independence Day, as law enforcement officials around the country step forward and do their job to protect private citizens and public order, to protect our cities, our towns, our countryside, and yes, even our monuments and public buildings, from vandals, armed insurrectionists, malcontents, leftists, a whole gaggle of people who need to be brought to book for their crimes. I saw that the federal government has now charged 150 individuals for damaging monuments. That's a nice start. How about the other 150,000 now? And when we're done with that, let's turn in the November election to these officials who are mayors and governors and congressmen at the state level and even at the national level, the collusion of members of one political party in encouraging and participating in the lawlessness that's taking place here and the shameful conduct. There's a reason we have a ballot box. Let's use it to send these reprobates a message and to send them packing. And to those out there that think this is some sort of clarion call to alt this or alt that, you're full of it. This is the middle ground. This is the center. Nothing I said is controversial. Nothing I said is untrue. It's all factual. It's all right down the middle of the road. And it's what being an American is all about. Rational, cogent thought. Not your rabid, juvenile, emotional temper tantrums. It's comical watching people who demand that police be defunded and disbanded, but then call the police asking for the police to protect them so that they can argue about defunding them. The sheer lunacy of it is beyond the pale. It is something else. But this is the reality we face today. And I first observed this lunacy watching morons at the University of Cape Town and at Rhodes University demanding that Rhodes must fall Fees must fall. The colonialism must end. Not realizing the irony of the fact that Rhodes University would not exist were it not for the generosity and the endowment of Cecil Rhodes. Morons. Morons. Not even understanding the things Rhodes did and didn't do. And never considering for a moment that people are complicated. Plenty of people have done something in their life that in the current contemporary environment, many of us might find to be less than desirable. But that doesn't mean that it outweighs the good works or good deeds that others did. It's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And when you give oxygen, it's like a fire. When you give oxygen to this idiocy, this lunacy, when you allow it to continue, then it just grows. And we've seen that in South Africa. We've seen that here in America. You have a sitting president of South Africa now walking around openly saying that the economy of South Africa is racist and colonialist. Mind you, this is a man that has profited to the tune of $450 million US. Did he get that because he invented a widget or an application or he had some brilliant idea for business? No. He got that from corrupt handouts from corporations shaken down by the ruling African National Congress to give equity stakes to connected elites from the ANC, including your sitting president in South Africa. And when it came time for wealthy South Africans to be generous, to help other South Africans survive the draconian lockdown imposed by the African National Congress's undemocratic, unelected, unaccountable National Coronavirus Command Council, where was Cyril Ramaphosa and his $450 million? Nowhere to be seen. Instead, it was up to the Ruperts, the Oppenheimers, Patrice Motsepe to donate their money, which was far larger than the money contributed by the government of the African National Congress. And the grand sum of $0, 0 rands donated by Cyril Ramaphosa. By contrast, here in America, we have a president that's demonized and lied about on a minute-by-minute basis by useless media figures, deranged lunatics on Twitter, fools, and loathsome corporate hacks. And I don't like Donald Trump, but I can be honest about what's going on here. Yet Donald Trump has never taken one penny from the federal government as salary. In his time as president, every cent of his salary has been donated back to the federal government, to the budget. The only say he has over that is what department it goes to. That's what Donald Trump has done with the money the government has paid him. In the meantime, his vast fortune has been held in trust. And rumor is it's much smaller than it once was. But you don't see the man losing his mind over that. He's actually running for re-election. Yes, 244 years, ladies and gentlemen. Happy birthday to the United States. And I'm going to head to bed here shortly and wake up in a country that I hope and continue will last for many, many more years. And I hope to find many of these criminals arrested and charged with sedition and treason or insurrection. That's what we need to see in this country. And then, if people have legitimate cause for their government, then they have a right to seek redress from the government if there's such a thing as institutional racism, or if they feel such a thing exists. There are mechanisms to address our government for redress of grievances, and people should consider that. Not burn streets down, not attack people in the streets, knock their teeth out, knock them unsensible, not walk up to a vehicle and shoot someone in a crowd. The height of irresponsibility. The height of irresponsibility. Not a single word from the media that so rabidly attack our Second Amendment rights to defend ourselves by being armed. When a leftist shoots a member of the public and endangers all those around him, like a wanton criminal. I'm not talking about those shootings. No, that's an inconvenient shooting, only when it's a school. I don't talk about the people dying in Chicago every day under Democratic governance. Or now in New York, a city that was once living under law and order when Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of that city. but now was descending into total chaos and lawlessness under Mayor de Blasio, whose real name, his given name, his surname is Wilhelm, but who changed it to his mother's maiden name, de Blasio. Yeah. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's happening in America. Nonetheless, people serve, whether it's as a police officer, law enforcement, emergency medical technicians, government employees who are not deep staters, and those in uniform who support and defend our Constitution, active and reserve component around the world. Anthony EduTube says, spare the rod, spoil the child. Now look at the world chaos. I agree, EduTube. Absolutely right. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Starting with them when they're children. The rod was spared, and now they're spoiled malcontents who have no appreciation. They seek to implement systems of governance that have led to the deaths of 250 million people in the past century. 250 million people. Absolutely insane. Anthony says, true patriotism springs from a belief in the dignity of the individual, freedom and equality, not only for Americans, but for all people on the earth. Well, that's a fair statement, Anthony. I agree with that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Absolutely. But I'm charged with supporting and defending my Constitution. Or at least I was in uniform. But the good thing, as an American soldier, you have the distinct privilege of an opportunity to serve around the world, supporting our friends, partners, and allies, and encouraging others to follow these beliefs. So there you go. Morton says, I cannot agree more, EduTube. There are way too many rights today, but right to behave responsibly. Yes, and there ought to be a consequence to behaving irresponsibly. I get a huge kick out of the young lady who claimed that she lost her job after making a terroristic video in which she used a vile racial slur, which she created apparently, because I never heard it before, but intentionally using a racial slur against white Americans. And she threatened people. She threatened murdering them, stabbing them. She lost her job. And some people feel bad. They claim that conservatives cost her job because they repeated her lies. Oh, I lost my job because Trump supporters, they got me to lose my job. Well, the facts have come out, ladies and gentlemen. She didn't have a job. She's a lion sack of cock. She was offered an internship at Deloitte. She wasn't an employee there, an unpaid internship at Deloitte, a 2-week internship. And she violated their code of conduct. Deloitte will not employ people who make terrorist threats. She was terminated, but not as an employee. She never worked for Deloitte. She's a liar. She's a fraud. She's an attention-seeking sack of cock. That's what this person is. She lied. She deceived. Absolute nonsense. And people fell for it, especially on the left. But what I found most comical about it is this young lady. By the way, she graduated in May, so she's been out of university for a month and not even in the workforce. And now she's got big crocodile tears because MAGA supporters are keeping her from employment. No, your mouth is keeping you from employment. There are consequences to terroristic behavior. And when you threaten people, you're not exactly employable. And the fact that whatever parents you have failed to inculcate that sort of responsibility in you is a crying shame. You should ask for money back from your parents because clearly they don't know how to raise a child. Your behavior is reprehensible. You weren't fired because of MAGA supporters. You were fired because you violated the terms of employment for Deloitte. And they have a right to terminate you for such conduct. But to listen to her try to blame it, well, MAGA supporters and Trump supporters, they retweeted what I wrote. Well, here's a little advice, moron. If you make a statement that you don't want the world to know about on social media, that's a dumb start. If you make a statement and you don't want Trump supporters to see it, then you shouldn't put it on a public platform where everybody can see it, especially when you hashtag the vile things you say, because that sort of is a tip-off that this is a word that people are following. A little more advice to you. If you want to say vile, disgusting racial slurs, it's probably best to do it in private where there's no record of it or a closed group. But the height of stupidity is listening to this young woman complain that people retweeted what she wrote. Clearly, her intent was to post these things online so that people would read them and share them? Or is it only the bigots and the hate-filled progressive leftists like yourself who are allowed to see it? Anyway, so her crying crocodile tears. Too bad, so sad. I'm not even sure Walmart will hire you as a greeter because you're not a very friendly person. Anyway, life lesson learned the hard way. The next time you threaten someone, understand there are consequences. And you weren't fired by conservatives. And conservatives are not engaging in cancel culture. That's the left that does that. Don't try to lay that in our lap. Daryl Crouch says, morning, Chris. Happy Independence Day. Well, thank you so much, Daryl. Thank you so much. I just wanted to come on after midnight and wish America a happy birthday. And, of course, I read from our Declaration of Independence briefly, and I discussed the fact that, as a Desert Shield, the first combat that I was ever deployed in, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, we had 2,225,000 people serving in uniform at that time, of which 694,550 of us deployed to the Gulf. So about 1 out of 3 uniform members went to the Gulf. But today, only 1,680,000 of us are still alive. And that was as of November of last year. So we're approaching a year later. The number is actually smaller than 1.6 million or 1.7 million. And that's kind of scary. That means that 1 out of 4 people who were serving active duty then no longer live. Of course, in those figures are people who've died natural deaths, like General Schwarzkopf, who's passed away, and many others. But the point is that, wow, not even 30 years later, and 1 out of 4 people who stood around me in uniform are no longer alive. That's kind of a scary thought when you think about it. Now, for me, I was young Butterbar, a second lieutenant back there in 1990 in the first Gulf War in an armored battalion, riding around in an M577 armored vehicle with half a dozen radio stacks inside there. I'm sure it sterilized me in some fashion, listening to all that radio frequency coursing through my body, hearing artillery fall all around me from the Iraqi Republican Guards. But, 3rd Battalion, 8th Cavalry, 2nd Brigade, 3rd Armored Division. Gelnhausen, Germany. Anyway, so 1 out of 4 people no longer around. Morton says, sorry, I have big fingers and keys are small, hard to avoid typos. Not a problem. Morton Mole says, Chris is running a 24-hour channel now. No, not yet, but maybe I will. Just depends on the interest here. You know, it's funny. I tuned in and actually I had 4 additional subscribers that joined later this evening. And then I looked and I watched as each of them went down each time I checked my channel. Lost 4 subscribers tonight. I didn't even do a video. So it's pretty sad when people leave your channel and you haven't done anything. So EduTube says, when my boys throw a temper tantrum in the shop, they get a smack. Never did it again. A lady screamed, how can you smack a child? I wonder how her children grew up. Her children grew up to be the insurrectionists in places like Chaz or Chop or whatever fictitious name they came up with before they were disbanded. Her children are the ones who grew up not to respect not only their elders, but anyone else, or even themselves. Linda van der Hoyen says, happy Independence Day, Chris. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It is Independence Day, hence my reason for coming on. It's now 7 o'clock in the morning for folks in South Africa and Botswana. But here in the U.S., it's after 1 o'clock in the morning. And I just came on about 45 minutes ago just to say happy birthday to America and do a little housekeeping and talk a little bit about being a proud American. You can see I'm wearing a cap, a veteran's cap from Operation Enduring Freedom. I've got several of these, the Operation Desert Shield and Storm. I've got the Cold War veteran. I've got a couple others that I wear. These are all combat events. 7:13 in the morning in South Africa. Yep. And 1:13 here in the morning in the United States. President Trump was at Mount Rushmore, and they did a big fireworks ceremony there. And the malcontents showed up. They parked their vehicles to block the road to prevent Americans from enjoying Independence Day celebrations with the president. They felt it was their prerogative to interrupt that. So they parked their vehicles, they slashed their tires and removed the tires because they thought that means they couldn't be removed. But alas, it's easy to remove. I have a plan. I had a plan in place long before these idiots showed up. Very simple. You have a forklift. They do this. You drive the forklift up. You raise the arms. You take the 2 spikes and you push it right through the car. And you lift the car up that way and you put it on a lowboy and you drag it off and you dump it in a landfill. Problem solved. You abandon your property. Clearly, you don't care for it. You're not going to disrupt events. But they tried. So President Trump was at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. Beautiful sight, by the way. Been there. Really, really enjoyed the experience. One of my favorite movies of all time was involved Mount Rushmore. That's by Northwest, an amazing film, an Alfred Hitchcock film at that. And in North by Northwest, of course, they go to Mount Rushmore. Really, really cool movie. If you've never seen North by Northwest, I encourage you to check it out. Really, really good stuff. So Tom took a message away. Tom is in the same time zone as me, so he's up late too. But anyway, so so Independence Day, 244 years for the United States. And I got to tell you, I don't understand. Oh, that's right. You're 1 hour behind. You guys, you get the Central Time Zone. Sorry. Okay, well, it's still after midnight for Tom in Tennessee. Yeah, but I really don't understand why. I understand why. I know why. It was an insidious, intentional purpose why civics was eliminated from junior high school and American government from high school. The intent was to make an illiterate American population, and they have succeeded beyond their wildest imaginations. Listening to people not understand how our government is organized, the unique checks and balances to ensure that we don't suffer the tyranny of the majority, and that no branch accrues too much power over the other at the federal level, and our system of federalism. Ooh, 9:15 in Mauritius. Yeah, you guys are a little bit ahead there, Mauritius, there, Morton. Cool beans. Maybe I should bring Morton on and talk about Mauritius sometime. That would be a cool conversation, because I'm always promoting Mauritius, along with Botswana, Rwanda, Cape Verde, places like that. But yeah, Mauritius, cool. Yeah, maybe we should do that sometime. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that, to get off the Independence Day topic for a moment, I hope that folks have been enjoying the stream and you like the content and the guest. Speaking of guests, in case you didn't catch it, I've got some exciting guests coming up. And let me just run through some of my guests coming up here very quickly so you guys are on top of it. But I want everyone to know, so tomorrow, my guest is Major General retired Johan Yost, who served in the South African Defense Force and then also served in the merged South African National Defense Force, from which he retired as a Major General. Following his service in the South African military, he worked for BAE Systems, a defense contractor. And while he worked for them, he traveled the world and was involved in defense contracting, defense acquisition, things like that. But then after that, he went to work once again in public service for the South African Park Service, where he worked for several years. Once he finished his time working for them, he's now switched over to working for a private non-governmental organization that supports the Park Service in South Africa. So we're going to be talking today, what am I saying? Today, Saturday, July 4th, America's Independence Day, our birthday. I'll be talking to General Yost about wildlife and wildlife conservation in Africa in particular, but South Africa especially. So we'll be talking about that. It should be an interesting conversation. But then I have additional streams coming up. Included in those streams are the following. I have a special feature on Monday with Dax. Dax is an artist, a painter, who resides in Johannesburg. He's a Swati/Ndebele, South African. His mother's from Bulawayo. His father's from South Africa, grew up in South Africa. So we'll be talking about it. Now, Dax is a former panel beater, a lot of experience fixing people's broken cars. And he took his talent for painting into a direction actually producing paintings. So we're going to talk about his experience as a painter and also the impact of the virus and the lockdown, what it's done to his business and his economic prospects. But then, ladies and gentlemen, this is very exciting. This is very exciting. So I have on Wednesday, Nadine. If you're an Afrikaans speaker, you know who I'm talking about. She's been a super successful musician in South Africa now for 25 years. Nadine Hofveld will be on this program, Chris White Africa. So those of you up early in the morning on Saturday, you get to hear it first because I didn't announce it previously because I didn't have a confirmation about it until late last night, which was for me was just a few hours ago. So Nadine Hofveld will be on this program Wednesday at 11 o'clock Eastern U.S. time and at 5 p.m. in Johannesburg and Gaborone. That's right, Nadine. Yes, she's amazing, absolutely amazing. So you will see her here on Chris White Africa on Wednesday, and she's really just amazing musician. I've loved her music for years. She's very popular in Europe, among other places. She's something else. Now, she has performed with other international stars like Billy Ocean, Robbie Williams, Celine Dion, the Spice Girls, and also she's performed with the likes of Steve Hofmeyr in South Africa. She's known for her popular song, Kapse Drai, and many others. She's got multiple albums. She's a huge success, wonderful lady. And Nadine Hofveld will be on this program on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to it. It should be very exciting. In addition to Nadine coming on the program on a Wednesday, other upcoming features include Friday, Giselle will be on the channel, and Giselle will be covering all the songs from her album, which recently was released, Fitland's Mensa, because we're celebrating the fact that all the songs are now digital. And so she's going to be on Talking to Me, and we'll play a few of her music videos and talk about her music. That'll be about a 90-minute program this coming Friday. So Saturday, Major General Johan Yosta. Monday, I have Dax, a painter from South Africa. And I didn't mention Tuesday, but on Tuesday I have Marlaise, who's famous for this viral video when she ran into a rugby goalpost. And those of you who saw the viral video, you know what I'm talking about. She became a bit of an internet sensation over that. She's currently living in the Netherlands as an au pair. And we're going to talk about instant fame and celebrity as a consequence of YouTube and what she'll be doing in the future. So that'll be on Tuesday, but I'm waiting for confirmation that it's actually on. And that'll be a little bit later than my normal stream for special features, but then a special feature again on Wednesday with Nadine, yes, and on Friday with Giselle. And then whomever I set up for Saturday will be there as well. So that's some upcoming streams, ladies and gentlemen. Since you're here early in the morning in South Africa and early morning, late night here in the U.S., you get to find out first, hearing from me, that Nadine will be on the program. I'm not seeing any commentary about Nadine. Does anybody care that Nadine's coming on the program? I'm pretty excited about it. I'm going to have to make sure that I don't behave like Jason. I don't want to be fanboy Chris when I have Nadine on here. So I gotta be calm and chill out and just interview her like I interview anybody else. So I'm kind of excited about it. So Lisa Finch says, "Thanks, Chris. You're the greatest." Well, you're welcome, Lisa. What are you thanking me for? You're most welcome. What are you thanking me for? Yeah, so I missed something. Let's see. What are you guys saying here? Yeah, great idea to talk about Mauritius, please. Ashley wants to hear that. Cool. Morton says, well, Morton, we know you're South African. I figured that, but that doesn't mean you can't talk about Mauritius. Maybe we could do that sometime. At a minimum, you could at least call in, maybe not do a whole show. We could talk about Mauritius. Mauritius is a pretty cool place. But Lisa says, I'm the greatest. I'm still want to know why. Morton says, the lockdown is okay here. No hassle. Population very disciplined, well behaved. Not that I support lockdown in any way, shape, or form. Okay, cool beans. Daryl Crouch says, and thanks, Anthony, have been given a 2-year extension to go over. Oh, that's awesome. Nigel says, happy 4th of July. Well, thank you, Nigel. I appreciate that. Martin is giving hand clap. OIF. Oh, yeah, there you go. Ashley, me too. Been a fan of Nadine since one of her early auditions when she sang a very pretty song I've never heard again. Definitely going to ask about her about that one song. Cool. Yeah, that should be cool. Nadine will be awesome. Really excited about it. And this comes courtesy of my friendship connection with Giselle and her manager, that this is possible. I actually was trying to get another artist who I'm interested in, and it hasn't gone very well reaching out to that artist, just not able to contact that person. So in the meantime, my connection reached out to Nadine, and Nadine said, yes, happy to do it. So yeah, that's going to be kind of exciting. I'm really excited about that. Should be a lot of fun. Anyway, so yeah, Ashley, make sure you're here on Wednesday. As of right now, it's scheduled for 5 p.m. in South Africa. So that would be, let's see, that would be 7 p.m. in Mauritius, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have Mauritius at the bottom of my browser. I do have Baltimore, Monrovia, Abuja, London, Munich, Pretoria, Greenwich Mean Time, Wellington, Sydney, Tokyo, and Perth. I don't know why I have Perth all the way over there. I know why, because it's so much further that direction. But anyway, yeah, so that's the time I keep it in my browser so I can keep up on what hour it is around the world at any given time. But yeah, so Mauritius 2 hours ahead of South Africa, so that should be interesting. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for tuning in. This was really kind of you to pop in. I didn't announce this. I thought about doing it yesterday, and I figured let me just get a head start on the 4th of July, and I'd come out and do something after midnight. Of course, I'm wearing a USA Rugby jersey. This is the road jersey from the 2011 Rugby World Cup. And actually, this is one of my favorite ones. I really like this road jersey. This is from the 2011 New Zealand Rugby World Cup when they still made these high collars on rugby jerseys. And then, of course, the cap is for a veteran of an Operation Enduring Freedom, which I am. Anyway, so Martin says, one of my favorite South African bands is Tananas. Okay, I don't know them. Okay, that's interesting. But I want to thank you all for tuning in and checking it out this morning. And let me dispel the rumor that Chris has a 24-hour YouTube channel. Not yet, perhaps one day. But something I might do as well is there's a lot of people that have been interested in working with me or for me. And so I might make this so that we do more than simply my streams and my prepared videos. Might start putting some other content on the channel. I'd be curious of what people think about that. Do you think other content might be interesting? Of course, that's a hard question to answer because you wouldn't know until you saw the content, right? Unless it's just somebody famous. But, oh, yeah, I know. I saw that. And Michael says, geez, Martin, they go back a few years. EduTube, I lived in New Zealand for 10 years. EduTube, where did you live in New Zealand? It's a beautiful place. I love New Zealand. I just wish I get the New Zealanders not be so tetchy about letting Americans live in their country. But it is quite lovely, beautiful place. Unfortunately, it sits on the ring of fire, so you always have to be worried about earthquakes and potentially tsunamis. But a beautiful place. And of course, remember the 2011 Rugby World Cup was disrupted by the earthquake that took place in Christchurch, a devastating earthquake. So there were no games in Christchurch as a consequence when the 2011 World Cup happened, which led to me going to Nelson, which is located in the very north part of the South Island. So I flew to Nelson to watch the USA play Italy. It was an interesting experience. I enjoyed the time there, but I was just flew from Air New Zealand from Auckland down to Nelson, was there. Got picked up by the hotel I stayed at, a little guest house, stayed overnight. Guy took me there, and then I walked to the game the next day and then flew out that evening, went back to Auckland. Yeah, it was pretty cool, but never got to Christchurch. Would still like to get to Christchurch sometime. Nigel says, be scared, very scared when there's a bicycle on yeah. Well, listen, I understand that Marlaise has had another mishap with a bicycle in the Netherlands. So I think she's cursed. We're going to talk about that when she comes on the channel, and that should be on Tuesday, but it's not confirmed yet. So I should get confirmation on, well, it's on Saturday today. Later today, I should get confirmation, and that should be interesting. Oh, you heard about that, Nigel, about the Netherlands. Yeah. One Kushal77 is saying hi repeatedly. Hello, Kushal177. Hi. Why are you saying hi repeatedly? We said hello. Anyway, so yeah. EduTube. Moved to New Zealand at 65. Back in SA in 75. Lived in 9 different towns. Wow, that's quite something. And back in 65, New Zealand was far tinier with its population and far more Anglo than it is today. Nigel's looking forward to the Nadine interview, as am I, Nigel. I'm, like I said, I got to be careful not to be a fanboy, get all excited about that. But anyway, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Should be interesting. We'll see how it goes. Really looking forward to it. She's quite a talented musician and quite a talented performer. And like I said, she's performed with some really big names, really, really big names. Yeah, so anyway, I am looking forward to that. That should be a lot of fun. Billy Ocean. She's performed with Robbie Williams, with the Spice Girls, with Celine Dion. I mean, those are big names in the music industry from around the world. And so she's had a lot of success abroad, and she's also quite popular in South Africa. I was rewatching the Corona 5 finale in which she's a performer, and again this evening, and it was just fantastic. Such really amazing performance. It's my favorite performance ever from the Corona series, the Corona 5 finale. Brilliant from the first song played all the way up until Kurt Darren sings Laat die dansvloer brand at the end. Just an amazing, I don't know, anyone there loves hearing me speak Afrikaans. Laat die dansvloer brand. There you go. Anyway, so Kurt Darren, yeah, big fan of Kurt Darren's. Pretty cool to watch that finale. It was pretty cool. Kushal says, happy 4th of July. Well, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Tom says, lucky you, no campaign medals for Jonestown, El Salvador, Honduras, so no cap. Didn't do it for medals. Nor did I. In fact, it actually cost me money. I bought this at the VA hospital in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, when I went for my physical to determine whether I was eligible for VA medical. So I went there as part of the physical, and they sell these caps. So I bought one for each of the conflicts, and so I got a basement full of these hats too. I always saw guys wearing these. I'm like, I'll never wear something like that. Now I don't have one of the big jackets that has all my campaigns and my units and ribbons and stuff on it. Maybe one day I'll do that, but that's not in the plans right now. So anyway, Inquisitor says, happy birthday, America. Well, thank you so much for coming in here. Excellent. Good to see you. Thank you all so much for joining me. We're coming up on 1 hour now. I was just going to do this for half an hour or an hour. So I was going to drop off at this time, but people are coming in, so I hate to take off. And the Inquisitor says anytime. Well, thank you. Does anybody have any questions about America, its founding, its history? Maybe I can answer those kind of quickly. If you've got a question, just put it in the chat very quickly, and I'll be happy to address it as best I can. Of course, knowing that I am a historian, that should make it easy for me to answer. If it's conspiracy theory, that's not really a history question, so it might be a little harder for me to answer it with answers, with facts. Anyway, so yeah, if anybody has any questions they want to ask, feel free to ask me those questions, and I'll do my best to answer it. But yeah, it's the 244th anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence. Nigel says, having been a career officer, how did you find your transition to civilian life? Well, it's a good question, Nigel. I think that in my case, actually, I found it to be thus far a lot easier than many veterans, and let me explain why. You might presume that someone that spent 36 years, their entire adult life, sorry, I keep fussing with my hair here, but someone who spent 36 years, their entire adult life in uniform, that becoming a civilian might be a very traumatic transition. For me, thus far, it's not been a traumatic transition, and I should explain it for the following reasons. Number one, as an intelligence officer, I spent a fair amount of my time in uniform, actually out of uniform, working in civilian clothes and working with civilians and civilian agencies. And then on top of that, I spent a fair portion of my career working abroad in embassies in which I worked with civilians, non-government organizations, businesses, diplomats, governments. And so I had a very different career than many folks. Of course, I served in combat, I served in tactical units, but I also did all these other things. I taught at a civilian university. And then the last few years, I was still in the Army, but teaching at a postgraduate institution in the Army War College. So I've had a different experience than many. I always said that I would stay in uniform only as long as I found it interesting and I felt I could make a difference. And it worked out well for me that I actually got to spend 36 years in the Army. And I would say that with a few exceptions along the way, sorry I keep playing with this hat, but I just don't like the way it's sitting. With a few exceptions along the way, it was always interesting and always felt I could make a contribution. There were exceptions. I worked for a few people that I'd like to have seen fall off a cliff, but we all have those experiences with bosses. Anyway, so so I've not found it particularly dramatic or traumatic. What I have found difficult, though, is that I have to work to maintain that sense of purpose. And for people that aren't able to do that, that must be very difficult for them. But one of the ways that I'm able to do it is I have a very inquisitive mind. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of writing. I was very active on LinkedIn, also writing articles for publication, working on book projects. And now, with the lockdown in place, I've spent a lot of time building this presence on YouTube and building this channel. And because those of you who watch my videos, the prepared videos, know that this isn't just made up out of thin air. I don't just pick a topic and go, okay, I'm going to talk now. I actually, either know something about the topic and even then still do research to check my facts to make sure that I'm accurate and not making wild claims so that I can back it up in my videos so that it's honest. And so that takes a bit of time. That keeps me busy, keeps a sense of purpose. And that's probably helped the transition a bit. What has not helped the transition is the lockdown. Normally, throughout the last 36 years, I would have been somewhere multiple times by now. I was in Japan in my last month on active service on leave or holiday. When I retired, I was actually in Japan. Didn't get my retired identification card until I returned to the States because I traveled abroad on my active duty card. And I'm allowed to do that when I come back, just surrender it. So I came back to the States and I got back here towards the end of October. Now I've traveled in the States a bit, but I didn't have any upcoming trips to Africa or to Europe in the meantime. So now we've gone from October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, into July. That's 10 months, and I haven't traveled abroad. I was scheduled to go in February, late February or March, to Vancouver for the Rugby Sevens. It was February. But what happened was I had a prior commitment for the U.S. Army War College, and I understood they needed me on Tuesday, and it turned out they needed me on Sunday. So I had to cancel my trip to Vancouver, much to my chagrin, because it was the last rugby I could have watched. But that's been the biggest transition for me, and it's sort of the same thing that's affected everybody. At the time, right after I finished my active service, when I'm just getting going, expecting to be traveling the world, doing business, consulting in other places, suddenly I can't go anywhere because of the lockdown. And so that's been the hardest part for me is not being affected by the lockdown. So it's kind of a weird time, but I suspect that I'll be more comfortable in my retirement from active service and my transition than many people are. But that doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, it's, you miss things. I miss putting on the uniform. Right now, I don't miss shaving every day, so I'm enjoying that, or getting my hair cut, but I do miss being in uniform, and I do miss being part of the team. And one thing I really do miss is when someone talks to me and they say, "What do you do?" "I'm in the Army." "Oh, you're in the Army. Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for serving." I mean, if you tell someone you're retired from the Army, they thank you for service, but still being part of that team, I do miss that, and that's something you can't get back because that time is gone. So I think that's kind of a good one. Okay, so what other questions we got here? Because you guys got some questions. Ashley says you can't go now because there is KO rest for the wicked. Inquisitor 1 says, what's your take on the current situation in the States on Black Lives Matter and how President Trump is handling it? Well, I think that President Trump was slower than I would like him to react, but I understand why he was slower, because the moment that he does react, it will be played out and misrepresented by the press and by the progressive left as a totalitarian, dictatorial response and an overreaction. What President Trump did is he really planned for a reaction and a response, but held back for a long period of time. Too long, in my view. But I think he held back long enough that they can't make that claim against him. Just like the fictitious claim that he was too slow to respond to the virus. No, he wasn't. He was the first world leader to shut down travel from China. He was the first world leader. He formed a task force the first week of January to deal with this, before we even had a single case in the United States confirmed. We actually turned out later had cases, but we didn't know about it because people were sick in Washington State but had not been tested because there was no test kit for it because the Chinese had not revealed the RNA to us at that point. So yeah, but he actually reacted faster than any world leader, and of course they tried to paint it that he was too slow, which is a lie. They're also trying to paint that he's responsible for the collapse of the economy. No, he's not. That would be the state governors who are responsible for that at this stage. We've actually added to 4.5 million jobs in the last 2 weeks back in America. Now, that's a start because we lost 42 million jobs as a consequence of this lunacy. But I think that Trump, the situation of Black Lives Matter, he was a bit slow in my view, but I understand why. The problem is that we have a federal system, and the things that need to be done must be done on the state and local level by state officials and local officials, law enforcement and judicial officials, and by government, not the federal government. It doesn't have the prerogative purview to do this. Now, Tief has been declared a domestic terrorist organization. The federal government has a lot more authority to go after that group. But Black Lives Matter has yet to be declared a terrorist organization, which in my view is long overdue. It should have happened about 6 years ago. They've shown their face of who they are. They try to deny it, but they've proven who they are. We see this young lady who runs around making these terroristic threats, thinking it's perfectly okay for her to do that, and then wants to whine and blame it on conservatives when she gets fired from a job she doesn't have, she lied about. Anyway, so yeah, so that's kind of where I see it. I think Trump is doing a pretty good job given the situation. Nigel says, I see a true officer there for ever adjusting his cap. Many South Africans, Inquisitor says, many South Africans believe that the South African government is in league with the Chinese Communist Party. What's your take on it? Well, these are good questions, Inquisitor. Thank you. I think that the South African government is far too cozy with Beijing. And they kowtow and acquiesce to Beijing far too often. Perfect example is denying the Dalai Lama a visa to come to Desmond Tutu's, Archbishop Desmond Tutu's 80th birthday. The Beijing government interfered because they're terrified of the Dalai Lama because he's a moral, just, and rightful person. And that's nothing that the Chinese Communist Party is. So they do not want to give him oxygen anywhere because they worry that people will try to defend Tibet, which the Chinese illegally occupy. So when the South African government denied a visa to the coolest dude ever, the Dalai Lama, the person who was among the most vocal opponents of apartheid, who supported the African National Congress despite its terrorist ways, and they abandoned him because the Chinese told them to. When he tried to come for a human rights conference in South Africa, he was denied a visa by the ANC. I think that's all you need to know about the ANC. You don't have to make it any clearer that they are in cahoots in league with the Chinese communists. Whether they're simpatico when it comes to policy and fellow travelers when it comes to worldview is debatable. I think a lot of it's just show. But when we see entire industrial districts set aside and developments for exclusive Chinese corporations' use, you know there's a problem. They don't even set tax-free zones aside for South African citizens. Why do that for China? Why do that for China? So yes, the ANC is far too cozy with the Beijing communists. Far too cozy. Nigel says, here's a question for For no Americans, how many stars in the American flag and what state does it? What? Huh? There's 50 stars in the American flag and they represent each state. Dale Crouch says, cheers, Chris. Go have a good sleep. Reveille is a 5. Cheers, Daryl. D. Stu said, Trump said what needed to be said in his speech tonight. I didn't catch his speech because I was busy doing something else. I'll try to catch it later. Luke, the lead slinger, says, hi, Chris. Happy Independence Day. Thank you so much. Inquisitor says, Chris, I share the exact sentiment. Cool. I'm not so sure which one it was I said, but thank you for sharing it. Yeah, so any other questions? Inquisitor, those are really good questions. Thank you for those. I appreciate it. Anyone else got a question before I knock off? Don't worry, you're not keeping me up. You know, it's funny when I'm often on at this hour debuting or premiering new prepared videos, so not a big deal. Marius Krugkamp says, howdy, Chris. Happy 4th of July. There's Marius, one of the members of Chris White Africa, one of the 63 members now. So thank you for being one, Marius. Appreciate that. And thank you for the happy birthday greetings. It's, it's really cool to be proud of your country, and I'm very proud of the United States. I'm not proud of the malcontents that are running around this country right now, and I'm also not proud of the callow politicians who've been cowering behind what's going on. Nigel says, wasn't the last state coming into the Union was Alaska? Could be wrong. Alaska or Hawaii? I thought Hawaii was the last state, not Alaska. D-Stu says, enjoy your channel, Chris. Thanks. Well, you're very welcome. Also enjoyed the subjects raised. Yeah, they were good questions. Let's see. 50th state. I thought Hawaii was the 50th state. Let me see. 50th state. I thought Alaska was the 49th. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me see. 50th state. I was correct. Hawaii is the 50th state. I remembered something from my civics class. On the 21st of August, 1959, Hawaii was admitted to the Union as our 50th state. Okay, and the 49th state would be Alaska. 49th state. And Alaska was... It's giving me breweries. 49th State Brewing Company. I don't care about the 49th state. That's funny. Alaska. So Alaska, with its capital, Juneau, was on the 3rd of January, 1959. Yep. So it came in just ahead of Hawaii, as I suspected. Yep. Alaska's 49, Hawaii's 50. That's what I said, Tom. That's what I figured. Martin says, embarrassed to be a South African. Yeah, that's unfortunate, Martin, and I understand, appreciate that, but it's really sad that people have to be sad or embarrassed by their country. I'm not embarrassed by America. We've done things that we should be proud of. We've done things that we should not be so proud of, not the least of which was the institution of slavery, and not the least of which was the treatment by Democrats of the Cherokee and others in stealing their land in southeastern United States and forcing them to move to the Oklahoma Territory. And not the least of which was the conduct of King Franklin in putting Japanese Americans, including Japanese American citizens, some second and third generation American citizens, into internment camps during the course of the Second World War. Or Jim Crow. But we created an amazing constitution, and we set an ideal for this world, and we sought to achieve it. And we've achieved it in many ways in this country, many things to be proud of. We helped end fascism and communism. We created the most vibrant market economy in history with the most amazing inventions, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. And we've done some pretty cool things in this country we should be very proud of. But yeah, no, there are not 52. Although Barack Obama apparently thinks there's 57 states in America. He's quite famously said that campaigning for office in 2007, 2008, these 57 United States. No, there are 50 states. Absolutely the case. 50 states. Is there a way to annex part of South Africa as a state? My flag is flying. Well, it's funny because Trump famously supposedly was offering to purchase Greenland from Denmark because it's a dependency of Denmark. It's basically a semi-autonomous province of Denmark at this point with home rule. But Denmark's responsible for their national security, the currency, and things like that. So Greenland... the United States attempted to buy it previously, but listening to the press, they acted like a bunch of fools. Donald Trump's a moron trying to buy Greenland. Why? Why is he a moron? Greenland is in a perfect geostrategic location over my head right back there, right in the center there. There you go, right about there. There you go. Right. Come on. There you go. Right there. Greenland's right there. Yeah, so right at the Arctic Circle. What better place to have a forward presence on American soil than Greenland when you're dealing with the European Union, with Russia, and China when it comes to the Arctic Sea? a sea that becomes increasingly ice-free even in the winter times. So a sea that's full of natural resources and will be the battleground of the 21st century. It makes all the sense in the world for the United States to try to acquire that island, but not according to the press. Of course, they also said that Seward, our Secretary of State, was a fool for purchasing Alaska from the Russians for just $15 million. Look how that turned out. Trillions of dollars later, just in oil wealth alone. Never mind all the other things that come from there. Yeah. So Donald Trump was ahead of his time if, in fact, he was interested in buying Greenland. It wasn't the first time the United States sought to do it. Anyway, so funny to hear the press lie and distort history and try to make Donald Trump look like a fool for such a brilliant plan. Yeah, funny pointing at the map. Well, I tried it. It's a lot easier for me to just do it directly over my head than it is to try to figure out, because it's opposite. You know, this is my left, but on the screen it looks on the right for me. So anyway, imagine the Cape becoming part of the Union. That'd be something else, wouldn't it? Right. Okay, folks, it's an hour and 15 minutes. It's 1:46 in the morning, so it's nearly 2 o'clock. I do have a stream in the morning, so I'm going to go get some sleep. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys popping in here tonight. Contrary to what I promised, I'm not going to play the Lee Greenwood song. It's too late, so I'm going to take off. But thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope many of you tune in tomorrow, or later today, I should say, to watch General Johan Yost on the channel. And we'll see you later today. Thank you so much. God bless. Have a safe day. Happy birthday, United States, 244 years. God bless America. And God bless the rest of the world and free patriots around the world who care about liberty and freedom and equality of human beings. All right, take care, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure having you as subscribers and followers of Chris White Africa.